and they have a big job. But we want to work with Kimberly and expand outside the city of Menominee and look at rural tourism. So we're always glad when Kimberly's on with us, and Stacey as well, and Jim Zahns, who has a great interest in rural tourism. And now I have 4:45, so I hope that answered that question, Ann.
You're live on YouTube now.
I do see we have somebody participating by phone. Is that you, Larry
Is
Bjork?
that Larry on phone?
No, that's Bob Colson.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Good, Bob. Welcome, Bob, because we will be hearing from your
Yeah.
report in a little while.
Thank you.
I see that now, Bob. Your name is up there. 4:46, I will call a meeting to order of the Community Resources and Tourism Committee. Julie is our county clerk, is again our recording secretary, and she will take the roll call at this particular time. I can see everybody is here. We haven't heard from Larry Bjork yet, so when Larry joins us, or Tom Quinn.
I have the rest recorded as being present. Chairman Anderson, Ann Vogel, Jim Zahns, and County Board Chair David Bartlett. Absent Quinn and Bjork until we see them sign in. So I've got that recorded, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Julie. And as soon as they come on, why, we will notice and we will alert all of you. Okay. I hope you've all read the minutes from the last meeting and had a chance to review them, which was on May 11th. That was a Zoom teleconference call as well. And if you've had a chance to read the minutes or questions that you have, I would ask or entertain a motion to approve them, and then for discussion or corrections or additions afterwards.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as is.
Thank you, Jim.
I second.
And Ann seconded. Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. Is there any discussion or questions anybody has on the minutes before we take a vote? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes, May 11th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Because we're going to spend so much time tonight on talking about budget and then taking some action, I asked Catherine Emanuel of Extension if she would forego her meeting with us today and if she would go directly to Keith Stray if there was any particular budget items regarding Extension. As you know, Extension comes under the CR&T committee reports. And so the UW Extension, Madison of Eau Claire County, Chippewa County, and Dunn County all fall into the same district. And so Catherine Emanuel usually works with our CFO in looking at budget requests. And I've talked to her and I've talked to Keith. And that's pretty well, so much of that is done, the expenses by the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And then we share a part of it here in Dunn County. So, but the rest of it we will be talking about. And our reports, then you've had a chance to read the monthly newsletter that comes out from all of our county extension agents. I hope you've read them. They've been a busy group and of people working very hard right now. And so that's why I do not have any report from any of our UW-Madison, Dunn County extension workers this month. Okay. Moving ahead, our first report, I've asked our interim executive director of the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation, Stacey Wigfield, for a little update. Let me quickly remind you again. When Eric Turner passed away last December, we went and I was elected president of this organization in January. We went for 3 months without an executive. And so then on April 1st, the board gave me authority to hire an interim. And I brought in Stacey Wigfield because he knows so many people and has computer knowledge and has worked a lot of things going on. And his contract, quite frankly, is through June 30th. But I want him to report to you right now because he and I have been working together and looking a great deal ahead of where we're going from here. So Stacey, would you update us a little bit here later, right now, about what you've been doing with the Dunn County EDC office? Stacey Wigfield.
Let me remember to unmute. All right. Thanks, Jim. And good to be here again. It's been pretty busy since the last time we met. And I want to fill you in on some of the exciting things. Really, it's businesses has picked up, not only with businesses opening up, but the business of the Economic Development Corp seems to have increased as well by the number of calls and contacts I've gotten. And I'm going to run down a list and do this pretty quick. If you want to just shout out a question, go ahead, or ask at the end. As Jim mentioned, I've been working a lot in the office here to update and upgrade it. I mentioned that last time. Since the last meeting, the new multiplex office machine has arrived. It's great. It's everything you need for the future of a professional office. And we're very happy with it. Both Cherie and I have new computers now. We now have cameras on our monitors. We now have mics on our computers so that we can fully engage in the Zoom meetings, which we couldn't do just a short 6-8 weeks ago. So pretty happy to get that up to par. There's other things we're doing. We got rid of some old equipment, by the way. Cherie's going to get a new chair this week. We passed on some other office equipment we didn't need. That I think was a county, Jim, that offered us some file cabinets. We're good that way. So we're just trying to update and upgrade and improve in every way we can here. We're going to get around to some shredding. We're going to get this office in a position where the next professional that walks in here is going to be shovel ready, if you will. Their feet are going to be able to hit the ground running and not have to do some of these things that I luckily have had time to do because of the slowdown in typical economic development business. But so that worked out pretty good. One of the more exciting things was a couple of weeks ago now, I got a call from a real estate broker out of Chicago who's handling a deal for a company that sounds like they want to move here out of Eau Claire. They want to stay in the area. I might have mentioned this last time too. Since then, I've run into the attorney that is the local broker for the landowner, parcel owner here. And he thanked me for the referral, and they chatted, and it sounds, although he can't tell me everything, he's an attorney, it sounds like they're moving forward, and that's no promises. It's yet, but they're 2 years out on their lease in Eau Claire yet, but a lot of progress has been made already, so that was kind of exciting. Gary Steen took me around Colfax last week, and I was able to take in from him all of the industrial land that they have available, all the progressive ideas that Gary and the rest of the crew over at Colfax has. And as an offshoot to that, just over this weekend, I was able to run into one of the business owners in Colfax that I've known for many years. And one of Gary's and the town's idea is to have a rail spur come into the west side of an existing parcels of land out there with the existing businesses on it. And this particular businessman said that they would be thrilled to have another rail spur came in there, and that he knows that his company will be able to throw some funding at it, as well as he's real sure the companies that are surrounding him would be able to do the same thing. So that's watch for something there in the future. Everything takes time, but watch for something there. That was good to hear too. I got a call from the village offices in Wheeler. They're looking to develop a parcel of land there, about 30 acres, I'm told. It had some action in the past, but that kind of died away, I guess, and they're looking for anything that might come in there, up to and including retail, that would create jobs. So trying to get some information back to them. Sounds like they may have to go the direction of a TIF, but I'm gathering some information from others. Like I had a conversation with Steve Yan about it with Momentum West, as well as made some contacts with a friend of mine who's county executive up in Ashland, and I thought, well, there's a lot of rural areas around Ashland, so I'm in touch with their economic development person to see how they do it for any small town around that area that might want to develop a parcel. See what help they can get from economic development folks. So I'm looking forward to helping them. I just got a call today from the Regional Loan Fund people. They want to set up a meeting and talk a lot about what they're doing and how they can be a benefit in this area, and so that I get knowledgeable about that and can help others. Jim and I worked a little bit on the budget. I was able to give him some year-end projections. It got slightly complicated. I hadn't seen a financial report yet that included the first month's rent that we're paying, so I had to backtrack a little bit and get that projected out for the year. No big deal. But we're paying rent for the first time in maybe apparently ever, Jim. I'm not sure, those of you that know, but we're in great office space here, and the money's worth it if we have it in the budget. I communicated that to Jim already. We talked about next year's budget and the investors that give about I figure it's around 25% of our budget. That ask will go out this fall. In our paperwork, we actually call it fundraising. Might want to drop that term. I spent my whole life in nonprofits, and I avoided doing fundraising myself, so we formed our own foundation to do the fundraising. But I like the term investors, and if we can get these investors to keep funding as much as 25% of our budget, that's a real critical piece to this, the future of this Economic Development Corp's budget. I met with a city manager and the mayor one day. I believe it was just last week. We're working about every angle we can think of to make contact with and get some action from Raj that owns Tanglewood. We see that as a big piece of Menominee, whether it's tourism or whether it's the spin-off business and the ripple effect, and that it's just such a gem in this area that we'd hate to lose it for what it is. The city has some future plans, as you all probably know, for the possibility of a housing development around that. They'd want to keep going with that, but if it's not a golf course and it's not anything, would the housing development still take place? That's nothing I can answer, but that's a question out there. So we've been pinging Raj from about every angle we can, and I'm real hopeful for that, but we just don't know what's going to happen there. I've been meeting every Friday with the Dunn County Community Recovery Team, helping to get be a source of information. Kimberly knows as much or more about it than I do as I sit on it, but that trying to move forward and help businesses reopen. And when businesses can reopen, I think that's going to be the sign that other businesses can start to expand, and maybe others can start up, because that's been fairly well a non-issue for about the last 8 weeks since the COVID thing hit. But maybe the lid's coming off of that as businesses open up, and if we can be a resource for anybody that needs help doing that, I guess that's what we're there for. So that's been a great group to hang out with. We're linking up a little bit with the same kind of group out of Eau Claire, but we want to be sure to maintain our own identity, and we're going to do that. We're under different orders, for example, at least at this time. So there's some differences between Dunn County and Eau Claire County, and we're aware of that, and we're keeping that in mind. So lots of webinars yet. WEDC, the Economic Development Corp of the state of Wisconsin, got a Momentum West board meeting coming in that I'm in on. The Greater Menominee Development Corp has their annual meeting. I didn't write that down, this week or next week. Some of you might know. And then Jim, I think, might touch later on the Dunn County Economic Development Corp's annual meeting.
Right.
I'm looking at a couple of tentative dates in late August 19th or the 26th, unless Jim's board, the Dunn County Economic Development Corp's board, decides to delay that for any number of reasons, but it could happen as early as August 19th or the 26th, depending on the direction of the board. And that board meets next Tuesday. And so I'm going to know more.
Wednesday.
Pardon? Wednesday, sorry. Yep. They meet next Wednesday. And then I'll get more direction from them. But if you want to pencil something in, it could happen as early as August 19th or 26th, and that would be in person. So we're feeling out the vendors for that too. And Jim, I think that's about all I had. If there's questions out there, I'll be here for you.
Yeah, thank you, Stacey. Just what we were looking for, and hang around because there will be, I think, some questions later, Stacey. So you nailed on it. I would just say though, Stacey mentioned a new printer, and I went in there and I said, "What are all these 4 printers doing in here?" And he said, "Well, none of them work." One of them worked, I guess, that our secretary was using, and I said, "Well, we buy a new one, make sure that the company that sells it to us agrees to take all these old ones away." So that was nice. Good job. Okay, thank you, Stacey. I'm going to move right on to a report from Bob Colson because I hope, do you have any news for us, Bob, regarding broadband or anything else from a planner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything firm to report. I did send the request in to the Public Service Commission to be broadband certified, broadband forward certified. I emailed the new director of the PSC, Jaron McCallum, to make sure that he got all of our stuff and that it's being processed. And he responded back that indeed they did get it. He's a little behind just because they're all working from home. He's waiting on legal staff to review our request, and they need to also review our ordinance to make sure that it parallels with what Broadband Forward requires. And we're fairly confident that that is going to happen because we used a template from another community and also checked the list against what is Broadband Forward requirements. So I don't think there's going to be an issue. We're just really waiting for their staff to kind of figure out how they're going to get it reviewed and get an answer back to Mr. McCallum. So I'm still expecting that by the end of this month that we will have a response, but it's really just waiting on them to review and comment and or to approve. So as soon as I hear anything, my goal would be to notify the chair of PSC's decision, and then right on the heels of that, I will need to get on to the agendas of Community Resources, CRT, the Highway Division, and probably just a follow-up with PR&D to make sure that everyone understands, where we're at, and that, and I'm just going to speak in terms of being very positive that we have been certified Broadband Forward. I can tell you that I've had several discussions with 2 of the broadband providers, one up Mosaic, and they were questioning early on whether we were Broadband Forward certified, and I said, no, we aren't yet, but we're going to be submitting it. So they are waiting with bated breath up there to find out our certification, because it does impact their let's call it their financial picture, because it does reduce the amount that we can charge as the county for broadband network projects. And the same thing, I had a conversation with 24/7. They thought that we were also Broadband Forward certified, and I notified them that we aren't yet, that we're waiting. So they're also wanting to know when this is all happening, because again, it does impact some of their projects. And I know that later on in this discussion, it's a budget discussion item, I believe, Mr. Chair, for broadband. And if you need, I could certainly stay on the line to answer those questions. But I don't have other than they have everything that they need. We're just waiting for them to review it and then get back to us. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you. If you have questions or the committee has questions, I'll do my darndest to answer those.
Thank you, Bob. I will just say that just before Bob sent this application in for Broadband Forward, I went and looked at it. It was very, very intense, and the work you put into that, Bob, to get that application complete was very impressive. And thank you for all the work you did on that. Now, I too also heard from these agencies about the permit, and it will save them some money. And so we're moving along, and we hope we hear soon on that. So Bob, appreciate the hard work, and keep us informed. And as soon as we hear about it, I bet we're going to see Mosaic and 24/7 as some of the others move ahead pretty fast. Thank you, Bob. Yes, if you can hang around a little while, I do have an item for discussion from my committee on broadband. Okay, any questions of Bob? Thank you again, Bob. Let's move right on into now then outside agency funding. Last year, outside agency funding was $135,251 from the county. That was made up of Dunn County Economic Development Corporation of $66,422. The Dunn County Housing Agency, now that's not the city of Menominee, this is Dunn County Housing Authority, was $46,000. And we get a lot of money back as a result of that federal funding because of this amount. So we really would hope to continue that. And the other one is Western Wisconsin Regional Planning, which we have been a member of, and we get great value from it. I know Eric Turner used to talk about the great value we would get from it. And I got a letter from Lynn Nelson not too a week ago or so saying they're going to reduce the amount of their request by $1,000 because of the economic impact of what's going on. Last year, we gave them $22,829. So their request this year would be $1,000 less, $21,829. And then I'm going to move right ahead. Last year, remember, this committee talked about what percent we would recommend for our libraries in Dunn County. And this committee, after much discussion on budget, made a recommendation and moved that we fund libraries at 95%. And we have been doing it at 100%, you remember, for years and years and years. It really does not impact when we do a budget, because this is not part of it's obviously included in the total amount of revenue that we get from the levy, but it doesn't affect our budget for us of what we were required to do. Isn't that right, Mr. Chairman, Dave Bartlett? And so when we turned around and we said we would go 95%, the executive committee then listened to that and said, well, you know, we think we ought to stay at those libraries of Boyceville, Colfax, Sand Creek, and Menominee. And Elk Mound, remember, is a branch of Menominee. And there's a fund, and we get the amount that they have, and we've been, and the executive committee overruled, and they said we think we ought to rule the libraries, fund the libraries at 100% again. Just keeping in mind the history of what you want to recommend again this year. The out-of-county libraries, which are all those counties where people that live in Dunn County go to an outside library in one of these surrounding communities, and they send us a bill. And we fund those libraries at 70% of that. And this is pretty well not even up for debate. We've done that for a long time again. So I guess be thinking about that, of what you want to do. Your chairman is going to be recommending again that we recommend libraries at 100%, county libraries and out of county funding at 70%. Then moving a little bit further, and I want to just give you the explanation, and then we'll go back and talk about all of them. In the past, really, this committee has never made a recommendation for broadband funding. And we never made a recommendation realizing that the situation that the county budget was in, and it's been severe. And so we thought, well, we'll do all that we can by providing what we call in-house contribution toward broadband. There are some townships now that are starting to contribute toward broadband, and it would be very interesting if I could turn around, we'd come up with a policy saying, okay, if a township wants to fund $5,000, Dunn County might match that amount and make it 10,000. At least it's something I'd like to see our committee take forward to executive and others for, and you can think about it. I'm not asking for a lot, but I'm saying something. Maybe to start out with, think about a $10,000 or something. And if the first two townships that said, and we'd make the criteria up afterwards, but the first two townships that said, we'll put $5,000 toward the broadband in our township if Dunn County will match it. And that might be a consideration. So think about it, 5,000, 10,000, something. All of a sudden, Dunn County will have a little skin and a little money in the game. And then we can turn around and say to all these 9 or 10 providers we have in Dunn County, we're trying to work with the townships and we'll continue, but think about that. And then finally, the last one is the R in our CR&T name, tourism. And Jim Zahns has probably been more frustrated even than I am about this. We really haven't had the money or really the person or the time to do it. And I've talked to Jim Zahns about this a little bit, and I've talked to Stacey Wigfield, our interim director of Dunn County, because those would be the two agencies that would work with you, Kimberly, at the Menominee Chamber and saying, here's something that will bring people into Dunn County. You're looking at something that will bring people into the Menominee and stay overnight, or all the great tourism things you have. But we've got a lot of great things outside of the city of Menominee, and we call it rural tourism. And so Jim Zahns, if you think this is a good idea, even starting with a request of, I don't care, $1,000 or something, through this committee, that would not go to Dunn County EDC, nor would the broadband. This would be under CR&T committee, working with Kimberly, working with Stacey or Dunn County Economic Development Corporation, and then even the Greater Menominee Development Corporation, that is, again, pretty well within the city. And let me finally say this. I've met with the Greater Menominee Development Corporation quite a few times, and we'll be meeting again tomorrow morning with just a few of their executive people, or one, Rick Geisen, and maybe another one, because what they're doing is very similar to what the Greater Menominee or Dunn County Economic Development, except they have no interest in broadband. The city of Menominee is pretty well. They have no interest in rural tourism. You have Kimberly. So the big difference is we want to expand economic development outside of the industrial and the tech park and the city of Menominee and housing. And we want to expand, make Dunn County a place to come and visit and have fun at. So yeah, you'll probably be staying in the city of Menominee because that's the only place with motel rooms, even B&Bs. But I'm saying, so we're going to work together with all of these agencies. And I wanted to give you that background before we really start talking about requests that this committee would bring. And it'll go right away tomorrow to Keith Stray. I should have done this last month. And he said, Jim, whatever your committee decides this afternoon, I will forward to him tomorrow. So now I've given you the background so that I hope now we can have a discussion on this. And but before I open it up, have I made it clear? Are there questions? And Dave Bartlett, I always appreciate when our county board chair is on here because you know, we got to balance the budget. And Tom Quinn, welcome, by the way, Tom, here. I didn't welcome you on earlier here. Tom is chairman of the PR&D committee, and I'm chair, and I sit on his committee. And then Tom, we're glad you're on this committee. Larry Bjork hasn't joined us yet, has he, Julie? Okay.
Mr.
So,
Chair, can I make one point of clarification
Please.
going back to the in-county libraries?
please do, Julie.
In the past, they were funded at 100% with the exception of Sand Creek. That was a set amount of 11,600. So I just want to make sure that that was clarified.
Absolutely. That's why Julie always keeps me on. That is correct. Sand Creek was not, at their request was, as I remember, 7,000 or roughly there. But we felt they needed a lot more with that awesome job they're doing there. So we funded them. I don't have the exact amount, 11,000 or something, Julie. I'm pretty close there, aren't I?
I believe it's
Thank you.
11,600,
Right.
and that's been the same contribution annually
Every
for
year.
subsequent quite a few years. So
And these libraries in Dunn County, wow, have they done a great job now with a lot of people. And then, of course, the libraries had to close. Some people couldn't even go there that didn't have broadband service out in the rural area. Otherwise, they could go there and get on a computer and get broadband service. So, boy, this COVID-19 has caused us to think a lot about the importance of broadband in Dunn County. We knew it was important, but even more now than ever. And so just keep that in mind. And I want every one of you to feel free to discuss this, because now that we got that corrected, if there aren't any more questions, well, we'll move on with the budget unless Dave Bartlett has some comments before I do this. Dave, do you have any? Okay, we'll move on. And he's shaking his head.
Well, can I ask a question?
Ann, of course, please.
Yes.
Oh, Kimberly, who is it? Kimberly?
No, it's Ann.
Ann, go ahead.
I'm just wondering what's included in these budgets? Do we need to know that, or, because I'm new to this, so I don't know what
No.
falls into these numbers.
Do you mean where does the money go? Do we need, when we offer a certain amount to this agency, do you want to know what they do?
I'm just curious, yeah, what's it for, or?
Mr. Chair, could I add a couple things? So we are mandated to have regional planning. So that one is something we are mandated to have. Economic development, we're not mandated to, or the housing authority. The libraries are all formula based by DPI based on their circulation. So I just wanted to add that for any other new members.
Yes, thank you, Julie. The library funding is, let's face it, these libraries could not function without county support. And with Bob Colson has helped us a great deal too, in meeting with these libraries maybe twice a year and talking about the fund and their library plan. So we have a great Dunn County library plan too. And every community is different. They all have their own library boards. However, they are accountable to us of where that money goes. And we do, through our county committee, we do pretty well have a chance to see that accounting. So they're very accountable. Now, the other agencies of Dunn County Housing, and as Julie said, the West Central Regional Planning were mandated pretty well. Dunn County Economic Development, well, Stacey's here on that. He's an interim right now. And of course, basically what they've been doing is trying to do Dunn County and working with the Greater Menominee Development Corp. They do not have an executive director, remember. So the economic development of Dunn County kind of works with the Greater Menominee Development Corporation. They provide a lot of funds for us. However, we don't forget every other community in Dunn County. And that's what Stacey's report was about, going out there talking. He's going to be going to Elk Mound, I know, sometime in the future too, and talking to them. And so these communities need us. And they're an important part of Dunn County. So that's how we work with everybody. Anna, I hope I answered your question for you. But I'll provide you more details sometime if you really want it. Okay, Ann?
Yeah, because I don't think I've seen a report yet about the Dunn County Housing Authority or what that money's for. So.
No. Ordinarily, we have a report every year from the executive director of the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation. We haven't had that this year because we haven't had a full-time executive director. All these other agencies come and report to the Dunn County Board at one of our monthly meetings, every one of them. So we get a report on them as well as the libraries. So they'll come to one of our county board meetings and give you a full report. Dave Bartlett, our chair, sets that up when they come and which county board meeting. So you will be hearing Ann and getting a full report on all of these at one of our county meetings. Okay? Good question. All right, I'm going to move on here. Right now I have 5:20. Let's go into the tough part of this job. And I'm going to start out by saying outside agencies funding. Those are the ones I just talked about, those three. And again here, I don't mean to do all the talking, but I will say outside agencies, remember who they are. Dunn County Housing, that was 46,000. Wisconsin West Central Regional Planning was 20, that'll be 21,829. And Dunn County Economic Development is the one that probably will have the most discussion. So I will talk more about that. If you want to lump these together, that's fine. If you want to talk individually about them. Stacey mentioned a little bit about rent. Remember, Dunn County owned the building that the Dunn County EDC is in. And when they moved to Dunn County, as part of the deal, provided that space rent free. Okay. That was our in-kind contribution along with the 66,000. We sold the building and now the city of Menominee owns that, and they have been very kind and very good up until the month of June, and it was agreed they would start charging us rent. And so we paid the first rent in June. And that rent is very reasonable. It's $622 a month, not just for the office, but the space and the meeting room downstairs and the other entities that we have. And that we will continue to pay each month now, as long as we are in that building, to the city of Menominee. So that budget is going to be, have to increase about $7,000. I added it up. It's 6,220. Yeah, about $7,000 if we were just to stay even, because now we're paying rent and we were not before. Now, hiring a new executive director, remember Stacey is interim, hiring a new executive director, we're having a meeting on that coming up. And some people think that we got money to go out and hire a headhunter and then get somebody real and up there in the big bucks. And Jim Anderson, your chair, sitting back and saying, wait a minute now, where's the money coming from? Where's the money coming from? And so right now we're in good budget shape because we're working with an interim. We haven't paid rent for a while and he's working a lot cheaper than we would have with a full-time executive director, plus health insurance, plus retirement, plus sick days, plus vacation. We're not paying any of those expenses right now. And I share that with you only because important Dunn County economic development is very important to Dunn County. And I hope you will start looking at least increasing the amount so that we can pay the rent. And when a new economic development director is finally hired, that person's going to say, well, you're offering this money, but do I have to go out and raise the funds myself to keep a salary? I'm being a little facetious, but I'm saying I would look at that if I were running for the job. Okay, I talk too much, but I think it's important that all of you know the background, because now we're going to talk dollars and cents. And let me start out again by saying, are you ready to talk about outside agencies? Tom Quinn, you've been on the executive board a long time.
Yeah.
And I have, and you know where this is going to go. And Dave Bartlett, you know where this is probably going to go. Just because this board approves it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's going to go in there and face every other's committee request.
Right. Right. And I don't think
that's the way it works. Tom Quinn.
Jim, I don't know. I mean, Dave, but I haven't seen that we have yet have any sort of real assessment of what the budget's going to look like next year in terms of revenue. And the hit that the epidemic as the pandemic has caused to the county sales tax and stuff like that. Chairman Bartlett, do you have any instincts on that, or are we still waiting to get clarity on it?
Nothing firm. They're pretty certain it's going to be between $350,000 and $600,000 hit. So less revenue.
I didn't want to hear that.
No, I didn't either.
No, none of us do. Now, and Tom, that's a great question. I think our role here today is, like Tom said, we don't know those impacts. So our role today as a committee is to turn around and say what we honestly, not pat it, but honestly think this is what we need as a legitimate request. We think to be able to go out and do the job in broadband expansion, economic development, and in all of these things that we feel are important in Dunn County. Is it going to happen? Very likely it'll be cut some, but I want you to right now, so I can go to the executive committee and say, these are things we really need. And they're all important. But outside agencies last year, again, was $135,251. This year, if it stayed exactly the same, it would be $1,000 less. That would be with no increase in Dunn County economic development and no increase in Dunn County housing. I really think we have to increase Dunn County economic development budget, or we're going to have to stay with an interim director who will work a lot cheaper for a long time. Now, I emphasize again to all of you, oh, and Dave, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I totally agreed with what you said, that I don't know that the committee should worry about, I mean, I guess I don't mean that completely. You have to think about where the revenue is coming from. But yes, we're going to lose revenue in sales tax, but I just got up and got the sheet that I got from Chris Corpola, and we are waiting for the final numbers from the audit. But it looks like we're putting 900 or 895,000 back into the general fund from last year, from their budget last year. So where our general fund is going to end up being, and where the revenue is going to end up being for this year, we'll have a better picture as the year goes on. When the audit is done, it's taking longer with the audit with this COVID-19 stuff. So, you know, a few months down the road, we're going to have a better picture on that. We'll probably have a better picture on the revenue. So I think now a committee, you don't want to go overboard and start thinking you got lots of money, because
Right.
We don't. We definitely are probably going to have a tough budget, but I don't think you should just think about that revenue is going to be way down. It may not be the only thing to consider, I guess.
Thank you, Chairman Bartlett. I think that's exactly what we have to keep in mind. Our job today is for our committee to look at those items we talked about and not do exactly what we can support and we believe is necessary and should be a request that I can support then when I go to the executive committee on behalf of this committee. And so with that in mind, I'm going to ask you to, unless you have more questions, kind of jumping around here, all of these things, outside agencies, library funded, and then broadband, and I haven't talked about, well, I talked broadband and tourism. Ag tourism, Jim Zahns, I don't know, even if we only throw $1,000 in there, that's not enough, but it's 1,000 more than we had last year. And you could do a lot of things with a Dunn County I know with what you're doing. And so I'm throwing that out right now for you to think about. And now, are you ready for, I'll throw this open to any one of you to, where do you want to start?
Supervisor Vogel has her hand up, her hand
I'm
raised.
sorry, who had their hand up?
Supervisor Vogel, Ann Vogel.
I'm sorry, Ann. Go ahead.
So it's on the same vein. In the budget, in the materials, the $66,422. How much of that is the salary? So that we know.
I have no idea because
Okay.
I can say we put that into the budget, and then along with the budget from the city of Menominee, along with all the other villages and communities in Dunn County and all of the other investors, as Stacey talked about. Stacey, our total budget was about 188,000. How much was it, Stacey? The total budget. I've got it here.
Sorry,
someplace.
muted. The total budget that I'm looking at for 2020 was 155,500.
Okay, so if you asked how much of that 66,000 went to salary, when Eric Turner was here, we paid him about this much money, but then we also had retirement and other fringe benefits. Right now, we aren't paying any of that, and we didn't pay anybody for the first 3 months. But we weren't getting anything done. And I don't mean that against Cherie. I'm saying it was impossible for one person to do all that. Now I see Tom Quinn's hand up. Tom.
Well, in the interest of trying to narrow the discussion a little bit, you want to, yeah, I would make a motion, or I would propose that we kick off a few of these things first. That for example, since regional planning is a required expenditure, and they have agreed to reduce their request by $1,000, we accept that as a budget request for regional planning. I would suggest that we maintain the library, at this point, maintain the library funding at the same level as last year, and that we maintain the housing development at the same funding level as last year, just to get started.
Okay, Tom, that's a good start. You want to make a motion to that
Make
effect?
a motion to that.
You heard the motion. Do I hear a second?
Jim Johns will second.
Jim John
I want to,
seconded.
can I clarify, Supervisor
It's those-
Quinn, were you leaving economic development out of that or
Right.
at the same amount?
No, I would like to come back to economic development separately.
Okay.
That's
But
left out right
Some
now.
of the easier ones first.
Correct. I agree. So it's those three. It's the libraries at 100% is in the motion. The West Wisconsin Regional at 1,000 less, 21,829. Dunn County Housing at 46,000. That's the motion right now.
Mr. Chair, we need to take each one of those agencies separate, libraries separate from, because the action items are such outside agencies, that's one budget line.
Correct.
Libraries is one budget, so we're going to need to do those independent of each other.
Yes, correct.
Mr. Chair, I would make my motion to, then I'll revise the motion. Thank you, Julie. That we
To the
fund-
libraries.
fund the
Is that all right with
library.
you, Jim?
That works for me.
Okay, so the motion and right now is for funding the libraries at 100% and out of county 70%. Jim would, or Tom, would that be okay to add that in there? Out of counties at
Yep.
70?
However you need to do it.
Is
Jim?
that leaving Sand Creek at the 11,600?
Yes.
Thank you.
Julie, thank you for making sure that is in there because that has been different. Now, to make sure you understand the motion, we're talking about county library funding to stay at 100% plus Sand Creek would stay at the same amount, which is more than 100. And that we would fund out of county libraries at 70%. That's the motion. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Can I see? I didn't see the vote. I heard from one motion. Jim Zahn said yes, Tom Quinn, and I will vote yes. That's 3. And Dave Bartlett. So the motion opposed? Anybody opposed? Thank you. Thank you. The motion carries. Now we've taken care of that. That'll be passed on. Thank you. That's a good idea. Now then, I might ask you, do you want to talk about Dunn County Economic Development Corporation?
I would rather go back and do the other, make a
Broadband?
motion to support regional planning at the reduced level.
Those all are grouped together, and the outside agencies, typically those are $1 amount, like the 135, 251, and it encompassed all three agencies.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So I didn't know that.
But we need a motion on it though, I think, correct?
Well, if Dunn County Economic Development is lumped in there, then we need to have a discussion about that.
Right. I'm open for discussion.
And I think if I can, Mr. Chair, I think you're right that we're going to have a hard time. It's always a struggle filling that position, especially with the rent going up. But do you have a suggestion for an amount that you think? I mean, I was going to say 70. I would say, obviously, we're kind of putting a marker down here now for further discussion with the executive committee. And that may actually need to change and be adjusted later on as we get into the actual search and see what the reality is, or what we have to pay to attract the right person. But do you have a number that you've been thinking about, Mr. Chair?
Well, thank you, Supervisor Quinn. I've talked this over with members of the executive board of the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation. Gary Steen is one of our supervisors. He is the vice president of that organization. He suggested a 5% increase. Now that was before I told him that we were going to have to pay $7,000 next year in rent that we didn't have to this year. Remember, I told you we didn't pay any rent up until June 1st. Now that's the case. So I kind of thought 5% of $66,000, you see, is about $3,700. That would bring it up to about $70,000 total. That's one thing to consider. My consideration would be to add at least the rent back in there. That's $7,000, but I can support that. Why? The city of Menominee is a big contributor toward the Dunn County Economic Development. The second largest contributor after Dunn County. However, they get probably a lot of the services of Dunn County Economic Development Corporation. So my suggestion, since you asked, would be to add the rent in there at $7,000 and go for a $7,000 increase, and I justify that with the rent that we're now paying to the city of Menominee. Okay, anybody else?
I think that would be a reason. I think that would be a reasonable starting point to go into the budget process with. So that would be approximately what amount of money, Jim?
7,000 on 66,000, and so we're talking about 73,500 about. The total amount would be 73,500, Tom.
I would make that motion.
To move to, would you want it a flat amount, or you want to say to add the rent of 7,000, or the new amount would be $73,500?
Right. With the explanation is that's the rent,
it's the rent.
And 5%. So 5% increase plus the rent. Right?
No, it's not 5. It's the total amount of the rent, and it isn't a 5% increase then both, Tom. It would be a $7,000 increase from what it was last year, because that's what the rent we're paying.
Mr. Chair, the 5% equates to $3,321. The rent increase at $622 per month is $7,464.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie.
Could you repeat that, Jim?
Julie, repeat those numbers again, please.
Your mic's off, Julie. Can't hear you.
Just a 5% increase is $3,321. The rent increase at $622 a month is $7,464.
I had those rough ideas and I sort of rounded it off, with a justification, but Julie gave us the exact numbers. Thank you, Julie. I wasn't going for the 5% in addition. Now that would be nice, and that's needed, and I can justify it. I mean, I can easily go to the executive board and say why we're doing this, but again, it's you're the committee. I want to hear what you all think. So let's hear it.
Well, I just think it's a shame that the city, which also benefits from Dunn County EDC, isn't picking up the tab for the office like Dunn County used to, and we're having to pick that up in addition to how we fund them. I know there's not much we can do about whether they decide to charge them office rent or not, but it seems a little unfair that the county's having to step up and perhaps forego that extra 5% so that we can cover that rent.
Well, how much, Stacey, does the city of Menominee pay Dunn County EDC per year? They break it down into 3 different segments. And I had that number down. Do you have it on the top of your head, Stacey, how much the city of Menominee pays Dunn County EDC?
I'm looking at the budget here and I'm seeing a 2019 proposed rate, and that was 26. I think it's up entirely from there. I believe it's they may have made that increase, Jim. I'm not sure. I wasn't part of those negotiations, but that rent was negotiated. So they may have increased what they were going to give in 2019 already for 2020, but I don't have that breakdown because I don't have the updated annuals or updated year-to-dates. But I'll keep looking and shout it out when I see it here.
They pay us in 3 installments, I think, or 2 installments per year. And one of them is yet to come. And I think that's the only accounts receivable when I asked you what accounts receivable do we have for the balance of this year?
Yeah, what did I say, Jim? Did I project out for the year for that, or didn't I break that down to the funding source?
Well, I've got so many notes and minutes, and I brought one packet here, and that was about $21,000 or $23,000 yet to come.
Hang on, yeah. 26 and another 13. Looks like it's going to be right around $40,000 is the total. And I can tell you that it was projected out in 2019 at about, did I say 26? So Lowell would have this on the top of his head, and I can certainly clarify this, but they may have made that increase having to show the rent, but then give it back. But I wasn't here for that. I'm just guessing by the numbers I'm seeing.
Thank you, Stacey. And I wasn't in on a negotiation either. That rent, Lowell told me, Prangy, that we will not charge any rent the first half of the year, and then we'll start paying you. Well, that's exactly right. And they are paying us a substantial amount. I quite frankly don't want to be the one to go back and negotiate that with them right now, but Jim, you bring up a good point. I mean, they're a big member, and yet they own the building, and we got it rent free when done. Now I suppose there is an option. Once we hire a new executive director, maybe they'll want to negotiate with Dave Bartlett here and Paul and come and see if there's room out here in this building. I'm just saying, and then you could negotiate again like we had before. No rent.
There's been no
Eric
talk.
Turner wanted to stay down there, and that's why we stayed down there after we sold the building. Go ahead, Stacey.
There's been no talk since I've been here, which has only been April 1st, about what next year's charges or investments from anybody else is going to be, including the long list of four pages of investors, I think. So we haven't, that hasn't happened this early in the year to talk about who's gonna pay us what in 2021. Just so you know that. I don't know how much that ever changes. I haven't been here, but, there's been no ask yet because it's early, you know.
Well, I've tried to give you, yeah, I haven't sat down and negotiated this either with the city, the rent. That's what they charge everybody in that bill. But we have been in there 6 months. They didn't charge us anything from January until now. I mean, 5 months. And I don't let that go without being noticed to them when I talk to them. I don't know. And good questions. And are we ready? At least Dave knows this, Bartlett. Sometimes we come in with budget adjustments later after we learn more information. But today I think we need to come up with something and as a starting point. Chairman Bartlett, again, any other words of wisdom for us here?
No, I wish I could foresee the future on what's gonna happen for revenues, but I can't. It's, I don't know. I think it's going to be a tougher year than I thought it was going to be before this COVID-19 stuff. But I don't know how much tougher.
Yes, you're right, Dave. So it means we have to move ahead the best we can with the information we have now. And so this is why I'm coming back to you again, and with the idea that our request is a first request and it might not happen. So I'll ask you again if you would consider at least adding the rent in and going for a new budget by increasing last year's budget by the amount of rent, which, as Julie said, is $7,464.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Tom.
just a point of clarification. So it sounded like there was some confusion as to whether or not the city was increasing their commitment to the EDC, sort of, I mean, obviously they're charging rent, but are they also increasing their commitment to us next year? Stacey?
I can clarify that. The total amount that has been committed, at least as far back as the last 5 years or so from Menominee, the city has stayed at 26,000 and change. And that $40,000 figure, it was inaccurate. That's with 2 payments left. But the total payment commitment from Dunn County is going to be $26,455, just as it has been.
From the city, I mean, of Menominee.
I'm sorry, from the city of Menominee is going to be 26 and change, just like it has been. So there was no adjustment for rent paid.
Okay.
Thank you, Stacey. Tom, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good discussion. Now, when you turn around and look at all these other communities, Colfax and Boyceville have paid up already. There are a few other out there that we charge and they haven't come forward. Now, you know, what do you do? It's not a levy. We just ask them to join, and if they pay, there'll be a few more, but that's not much. You know, I mean, I could get you that report, how much each community is paying, but then there's, as Stacey said, all these investors, the manufacturers and the businesses that all join and I want to be part of Dunn County economic development. And we couldn't live without them. Dunn County with our $66,000 and the city of Menominee of 26,000, you can see that's roughly 100,000. We get the rest of the money from other sources. Anything else, Stacey?
No, I've got that list of what everybody gives. I can run down it if it's important, but you tell me. I can run down the list quick.
I don't know if it's important right now. I think it's the bottom line we're looking at. And of course, any new economic development executive director, whoever it is, one of the jobs is out there trying to get people to invest. And but we have to take care of these people. We have to let them know we're doing a job. We can't just say, give us money, and they say, what for? Why? We have to show results. And so it's kind of like what we're trying to do right now and Stacey's doing a job and keeping us going for us right now. And as an interim, and I might add, I think we needed that, and that's where we're headed. Yes, Tom.
So I am a little, after hearing the discussion, I'm a little reluctant to state that we are going to increase our budget to cover the rent. That Jim makes a very good point, could be something that the city of Menominee could cover. So if we say, look, we're going to raise the budget to cover the rent, then we're sort of accepting a position that should be negotiated, I think. But I do think an increase is appropriate. So what if we said an increase to 70,000?
Okay, you want to make that a motion, Tom?
I would.
Okay, it's moved that we increase Dunn County EDC budget request to $70,000.
I'll second that.
And it's seconded by Jim Zons. Okay, there's a motion before the floor right now. The Dunn County EDC budget request go to $70,000. And Julie, that's about a 5%, real quick math. It doesn't matter in the motion, but that's pretty close to what Supervisor Steens, our vice president, was recommending. I think that $70,000 would be very close. Any more discussion on this from anybody? You ready for the motion to vote? Okay, you're voting for that we recommend Dunn County EDC budget request next year at $70,000. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. 3 ayes and 4 I vote aye. Opposed? Nobody? Motion carries. Thank you very much. That will be our request on that. All right, moving along, and it is 5:52. Not too bad. Well, we have 2 things left to talk about here. Bob Colson's still on the line. I guess maybe I'll throw it out now to Bob to.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Julie.
Are you going to set the housing authority and do the regional planning as well? That has not been moved on.
Well, you're right. I did miss that, didn't I? We talked about it and didn't take action. See, that's why Julie's on the ball here. Right, we have not taken action on the other 2 items. Remember, we've talked about the dollar amount. If you left Dunn County Housing at 46,000 and you reduced West Central Regional Planning by 1,000, that would be 21,829. Any more questions, or are you ready for a motion on these 2, right, Julie?
Correct.
If we can make the motion, one motion for both.
Yes.
I would make the motion that we support those amounts as you indicated, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll
Here's a second. And Jim's on, seconded it. Did you, Jim?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, the motion now is very clear. Dunn County Housing would stay at 46,000 and West Wisconsin Regional Planning would be 1,000 less than last year, 21,829. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. 5 motions, no. Any opposed? No. Motion's carried unanimous. Thank you very much. And Julie, thank you for bringing that up. So we got that clear. Now, I think we can move on to broadband, right? Bob, you and I, you still on the line?
I am still here, Mr. Chair.
All right. Were you on the line when I first discussed that we might want to talk about something on here as as a feeder to just start saying Dunn County our committee wants to put a little request for actually some money. Were you on, we talked about that and I suggested.
I've been here the whole time, yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
I've heard the discussion, yes.
Any more questions on that, or might I hear a motion for where we could start on this? If you want to do it.
My question is, what exactly would that money be used for?
Yes, Jim, that's a good question. I thought we wouldn't even plan the details until we knew if we had some, but my proposal would be that here's a sum of money that could be used if we decided later at committee that we would match some township grants maybe up to a certain amount, $10,000 or whatever. Township says we'll throw in 2,500, we'll Dunn County. First come, first served. That would be my proposal, but we got to have a top dollar. And if it never got used, it gets returned back, of course, to the general fund. Okay?
Mr. Chair, if I could?
Yes, Bob.
So it's a great question. You know, where does the money go, and why do we need to have the money? And part of it, there's a grant proposal process that the ISPs, the internet service providers, that they use to figure out how much they'll project out a project. They will have a dollar amount. And then they will start gathering all the support and anything else they have, and they submit a proposal to the Public Service Commission, and it gets reviewed, and it comes back with either thumbs up, thumbs down. So one of the things that they have found, and that we have noticed also and found out, is that the amount that the ISP is requesting, if they can reduce that amount by any dollar amount, it ups their points that they may get to put in the infrastructure, because the PSC looks at, let's say, dollars per mile that goes into it. So if a community puts in X dollars, and another community like Dunn County puts in X dollars, that reduces the amount that the ISP is going to ask from the grant by X times 2, whatever those values are. And so it's important to understand that every little bit helps, because it's very competitive. Dunn County has been very lucky in being able to secure a fair amount of grants for our communities, and it's the ISPs have been able to do this without us. They would be very happy if the county had some money to put towards this. You know, the amount is important, but also if there is an amount, as the chair said, you know, how does that get allocated? And I think how it gets allocated would be either first come, first serve, or there would be a lump sum. But I think that discussion could happen, and we could run that down and figure out how it would be tracked, and how you would put money towards a project. But I think having an amount in the budget, at least as a motion, would allow the committee and staff and the ISPs and everyone else involved to maybe bring some information back to help the committee understand maybe how to manage that account. So it is important, and the money would be used to offset the cost of actual broadband coming to Dunn County through the grant program.
Thank you, Bob. I think, and my perspective was that it was more or less, not the big dollar amount, but more or less, yes, Dunn County believes in this so much. Not only are we broadband forward, but we've been certified now in working with the broadband, and now all of a sudden we're saying to these providers, this is a little bit of seed money. And remember, it's just coming from this committee, and we feel broadband is important in Dunn County. We've said that for quite a while. Now let's say it with a little bit of requests for money. Then we'll decide later the criteria, and you heard of some ideas, but I think if it's $5,000, at least that's a start, and saying, let's think about it. That's why I wanted to bring it up to you today, because we're going to decide right now here today if we want it even included in our budget request. Anybody else? If I don't hear any requests, then of course it's dropped, because there would have to be a motion to do it. And so I will ask again, is there any more discussion about it, or questions, or? Not hearing anything once. Okay. No budget request for broadband. Let's go to rural tourism. I suggested that we start some seed money in here. I've talked briefly a little bit with Jim Zahns about that. I've talked to our Stacey a little bit in EDC about this. I've even mentioned with Kimberly how we would work with her on if we could start doing something countywide. Jim, remember, Zahns, remember a couple of years ago, we actually came up with an idea of what we could do, but there wasn't any money. What do you want to do regarding, and don't call it just ag tourism. I think we should call it rural tourism, because it's more than, well, Goldman's Meats and Berries would be ag and rural tourism. That's just one example. But we want to be able to promote some way Dunn County. So Jim Zahns, you have a comment on this? Where are you coming from?
Well, I'm just wondering exactly, again, with, like we were discussing with the broadband, where this money would be spent, what it would be spent on. If it would be something that would be a grant process where rural tourism destinations in Dunn County could apply for a grant, or something to flesh out a little bit more where what this money would be spent on.
Well, I think that's what we're here to talk about, if we even want to do that, and then we would determine, how we can maximize the amount of money. And it would be all those things that you asking questions about. I didn't go there yet because I thought, well, we don't even have any money to even be talking about what we might want to do. Again, I mentioned this with broadband, even $1,000 is a start. We might get 2,000, we might get a publication that we can take around out here to the waysides, to the parks, to the governor's, to all kinds of places where, Dunn County is in the business of bringing people, not just to City of Menominee, but also working with Kimberly. But we would expand it a lot. And so I wanted us to talk about this today, or we might as well change our name. Instead of CR&T, just call it Community Resources and forget the tourism. I'm sorry. That's a little blunt. Ann?
Is there a way, or is there some need for some kind of rural tourism task force that could be developed first with a plan, and then money would follow depending on what that plan was? Or would it include reimbursement for meetings so that this task force could develop a plan? Is that what potential uses of this money would be for? I think, there needs to be something done with tourism, but I don't know if the money is coming before there's actually a use for it.
Well, Ann, you're right. That question is going to be asked. Well, how is the money going to be used? That's absolutely right. And so we would have to have a plan. And I thought, well, should we develop the plan and then come in? Or should we say, we'll have $1,000 and then we'll develop a plan and make that grow? But I don't know your interest in it. And we are getting down to the point where, Jim, we had a plan a couple of years ago of a brochure. Can't we build off of that if we want to do it? Or if you say no, let's forget tourism for a while. You're the committee. I want to hear from you. Ann or Tom?
Tom, your mic's off.
There we go. Okay, sorry. I appreciate you bringing it up, Jim, and I agree with Ann's comments. I really think that we need to maintain tourism as part of this committee and rural tourism. But I do think the first step is to do a planning process where we get stakeholders involved in thinking through what that means even, and what the needs might be and where the potential sources of money might be. And I don't know if we're at that point yet. It seems like that planning process has to happen before we know how to spend any money. And I don't even know what that planning process would look like or what it would cost. Maybe Mr. Colson has an idea, or maybe Jim Zons has an idea.
Yeah, I don't know how that the planning process, it almost needs to be a subcommittee of this committee that concentrates on tourism, because it seems to, we always run out of time before we are able to really tackle anything with tourism and develop some sort of plan and get to the point where yeah, we're going to ask for $1,000 because this is why we're going to ask for $1,000. We're going to create an online destination guide or something along those lines. I don't know if we're putting the cart before the horse with a money ask when we don't know yet what we want to spend it on, except for the broad general knowledge that we know we need to do something. We know we need to promote tourism in Dunn County, that there are so many things that it ties into economic development, because it's also part of the quality of life for potential businesses and their employees and coming to the area. So it has a big, broad meaning, and it needs to be given a little bit more than just being an afterthought on the tail end of our meetings, like it typically tends to be. It almost has to be a focus, or the committee needs to make a tourism focus as part of the main meeting, and maybe the extension stuff that takes a good chunk of the meeting gets set aside, so that it's every other meeting we're talking about extension and every other meeting we're talking about tourism. I don't know what the answer is. These are just some ideas that I'm kind of throwing out there, but I don't want to see tourism dropped as part of this committee, but I want to see somehow that we, however, make more of a focus on it, and then perhaps determine what kind of funds we want to raise.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, Stacey.
If I was, having lived here, not my whole life, but a long time, there's a couple of things that stand out to me, and I don't know if you've ever gotten these requests from any of these groups, but if I was going to pay attention to rural tourism with my mind and with any of my money, it'd be first and foremost to improve our waterways, and secondly, our famous bikeways. So I don't know if that helps narrow the thinking at all. And I don't know if any of the groups that already exist, especially cleaning up the waterways, has ever asked for that kind of money, or anybody involved with biking, but just for purposes of throwing that out there, it might help narrow some thinking down to a couple categories at least. So thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. Good discussion. I guess maybe I'm wondering, and as Jim Zons was talking, I remember back be 2 years ago now when I brought to this committee, let's invite and host Alice in Dairyland and here in Dunn County, and it kind of, well, okay, and so we did it and we got it, remember. As long as Dunn County doesn't have to support any money and you raise all the money yourself, and we did that, and now of course you all know what happened. We're put back 2 years until 2023. And it's through no fault of anybody's. We were operating and going real fine. And that's a tourism. That is tourism. That was going to bring people into Dunn County. And it was an event, a year-long event. And I brought this to you right now because I'm thinking at one time I brought to you a magazine that Pepin County had, and some of you jumped on it and thought, why can't Dunn County do that? Okay, we didn't have any money. So now I'm throwing it out to you again. And yet you want a plan today? I don't have one for you. I've thrown 2 of them out. 2 plans. Alice in Dairyland, doesn't cost any money. Pepin County has a magazine. Let's Dunn County. We don't have any money. Where do you want to go from here? I'm sorry, I'm asking you. Where do you want to go?
Mr. Chair, if I could, please.
Yes, please. Bob.
I think that asking for money without a clear direction of how you want to spend it is I get the struggle that the committee is having there, and having a plan takes time and resources to generate a plan, and you certainly would not have a plan in place for this budget cycle. I don't know if the direction is, well, let's make sure that we know what we're doing, so let's get a plan together. As the county planner and the zoning administrator, and putting on my county planner hat, I think that a plan is always a good way to go. Having said that, I'm strapped for the time and resources to devote to a full-blown plan to take it on in 2020. It's something that I'm already having to go outside to get money for, or a consultant to do our comp plan, and that's taking up a fair amount of my planning time. And so it is important, but you have to figure out what it is that you want to have in here to put together a plan. And I think having this as an agenda item for discussion, to scope out the plan, because it's going to take time and money to do the plan, so that you will know what you're going to be asking for. I don't want to throw a monkey wrench in here and have this derailed, but it just seems that asking for money without the plan and some way of justifying it, I hear the frustration and the questioning from the committee. I don't really have a real solution as to how we're going to get the plan is the problem.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate those concerns. I understand it as a planner. You know, I have the hand up here of our tourism person from the chamber. And so I'm going to reach out with the permission of the group here, which usually we keep it within the committee members. But Kimberly, I'm going to allow you at this particular, I wanted to hear what you had to say from a chamber tourism person.
Yeah, so part of us with our tourism, we try to outreach to the Menominee area. So that would include all of Dunn County with our promotions and everything like that. And even if one doesn't have a set plan in place right now for tourism, if you open up maybe to like a grant option, someone in the rural area might have a huge plan that they're just waiting for a little extra funding to be able to go through with that plan. So even if you have like a open grant option, you might be able to help boost the rural tourism. Plus also, if you don't have time to create your own plan, it's kind of a win-win within it, just a different perspective.
Thank you, Kimberly. I really appreciate you saying that because that's important and we will remember. I'm glad you stayed on and I'm glad you made that comment, Kimberly. Okay, now, I'm hearing that, you know, we should have had a plan ahead of time and I'm hearing great discussion. And the budget thing is critical for today, as I say. I wish I would have had this discussion last meeting, but we didn't. And so we don't have a plan. So at this particular point, and I don't have a motion on the floor regarding doing anything. Do you have your hand up, Tom?
When you're done, I would, yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I don't want to, I think I pretty much agree with what Jim Zahn said and Ann said also about, but especially with what Jim said about, I don't want to not take action on this item today. But the action I don't think should be to request a budget allocation right now. The action could be that we as a committee make a commitment to establish a subcommittee that could include other members of the community and allocate time. And if I know Mr. Colson doesn't have any resources, I know how stretched thin he is, but I know that Mr. Zahns has a deep background in promotion and tourism work. I've done a little bit of it. I think as a committee, if we decided that we were going to work on this, not just talk about it, but actually work on developing what a strategy and a plan would look like for rural tourism, that would be a big step forward. I don't know if that needs to be a motion, but I'd rather do that than just come up with a dollar amount and then just sort of have no direction.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Dave Bartlett, our county board chair. Dave, let's hear from you.
Well, I agree with Jim Zahns too. And I guess I kind of like the idea that he mentioned every other month, trying to devote it more to tourism. I was looking through the reports we got from Extension this month, but I read the one about meat animals on May 15th and whatever, because I was kind of interested in the 4-H stuff, but with the fair. But anyway, I guess if you were just consider this, instead of having a separate committee, if you did what Jim said and try to focus on tourism every other month, and then your extension and the other stuff every other month, and just the months you're doing tourism, you have a written report from extension, so you'd still find out what they're doing. And I'm not saying you can't do something if there's business you sure should take that up. You know, I'm not saying not to, but I think tourism has been left behind, because I agree with Jim. I don't think the time has been spent in the discussion. And I think maybe you know, a booklet or pamphlet, what you were talking about, brochure. I've seen them from other counties and they're great. I'm not against that. I think that's a great idea. But I think to have time to do the discussion would be better. And I think Jim had a good idea there. If you as chair would consider maybe focusing on tourism every other month, and maybe forego that extension report, that would give you quite a bit extra time for tourism.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I may as well. As far as the motion to create a subcommittee or anything, that isn't the agenda action item today. The
No.
agenda action item is the budget,
Right.
21 budget amount for tourism. So I wanted to just
Yep.
add that.
Thank you, Julie. I was just going to point that out too. That's not on the action item for agenda for action. However, I will certainly take it under consideration strongly, and at future meetings, that's what we will do. And so meanwhile, though, because there is no action, I'm hearing from you, regarding affecting the budget on tourism, I think we will say that no action was taken, and that in the future, then I will let you know that Julie and I, when we put together the agenda, we will make sure that more time is spent with this, and then we will come with a plan. And that plan will include you, Kimberly, too. We will keep you involved in that. We will include Dunn County Economic Development. We will include certainly extension, and Jim Zahns would be, I would say, would be a chairman of this entire group that to get that moving. And so as chairman, that's what I'm sharing with you, what we will do in the future to keep that at the top of our agenda for rural tourism in the future. But meanwhile, no actions taken regarding anything on the agenda. Okay, that gets us all the way through the budget requests for today. And the timing is pretty good, folks, 6:20. So good job. Good discussion. Thank you to everybody. Our next meeting is set for July 13th if we stay at this same schedule. Depending upon where we're going, I would ask Julie, she's made the great arrangements for us to have a Zoom meeting again. We don't know what'll happen in July, but I came in here, this IT meeting today, and she set up everything for me. She's sitting at the other end down here. And it worked pretty good from my standpoint. To our guests, to Kimberly and to Stacey and to Bob Colson, thank you very much for your input today and your help and everything. And before we close, I have a request from Tom Quinn. Tom, announcements or anything else?
Well, I have a question, and that getting back to Stacey, I thought maybe we were going to go back to the program report, which I really appreciated. But I'm wondering if we have done anything to publicize or assist Dunn County businesses in applying for the Wisconsin We're All In Small Business Grants Program, which has a 1-week application period from, I think it's July, is it June? Wow, it's
Right.
just coming up. But I wonder, Stacey, if you've had any opportunity to think about how we're going to encourage people to apply for that?
Yep. Thank you, Tom. Good question. We've talked about that. Stacey, you're on top of that. You're not on, Stacey.
We've been able to blast out all of the information that we've been getting from a variety of sources, and just saw an email today that said that apparently there's some confusion from the business applicants, and so there's a webinar coming up, and without that in front of me, I can't tell you where it is, but they are having webinars that are going to come up, and specifically to answer the questions that applicants are having. I suspect that it's a question of exactly how long they've been in business, and if they started, and do they have the tax returns. That's just a guess, but there are some trainings coming up on that, Tom, and they're going to be quite helpful from the source. So instead of they're not WEDC isn't going to train me so I can go out and answer all those questions. It's coming right from the horse's mouth the way it sounds. So
have you seen the application forms? Are they available yet, or?
I've not seen them. I don't think they're out there yet. Has anybody else seen them? I think they're coming out. I haven't had them in my hand, but Jim?
They're not available till the 15th.
Right,
Yeah.
15th. Okay. That's what I heard. Correct. Good question, Tom. Which brings me around. Announcements by anybody you care to share with everybody right now regarding anything you want to share with everybody before we close? Well, good meeting, good discussion. I think this, we will pass this on, and Ann, don't be afraid again to ask questions. We all know, and I think we will follow up on the future meetings with what you said, and I will be calling on Jim Zons and to maybe come up with a little bit of at our next meeting already for an idea where we're going in this. Julie, are we pretty well covered everything here? I asked Julie, she's the one that, when I came in here, wiped my forehead, and asked all the questions before I could get in here. Did I have my mask on, and everything, and so it's been great. Nothing more, folks, and everything. Thank you, and Dave Bartlett, thank you. Always a pleasure when you join our meetings. You're a great asset to us. It is 6:25, no more, meeting's adjourned.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
Jim.
you, everyone.
Everybody.